Let us go back to Atlanta. At the final whistle, the manager of Egypt, Hossam Hassan, did not look at the scoreboard. He did not sink to his knees in despair or cross the pitch to shake hands with the opposing coaching staff. Instead, he marched straight toward the most famous athlete on the planet, crossed his arms into a massive X, and weaponized the official discrimination protocol of FIFA against the very institution that created it. This was not a post-match celebration. This was a public indictment. A 5-goal historic World Cup quarterfinal had just finished. Yet the defining image broadcast to millions of homes was not a lifted trophy or a tear of joy. It was a furious manager signaling to the world that the fundamental rules of the sport had been corrupted. To understand why a celebrated football match devolved into a diplomatic meltdown, we have to look past the 3-2 scoreline. We have to examine the exact anatomy of a double standard. You might think you know the story of this game because the media packaged it as a classic David and Goliath battle where Goliath eventually woke up. They tell you a giant survived and a smaller nation bravely fell short. But the truth involves a bureaucratic system that protects its premium product while systematically suffocating anyone who dares to disrupt the broadcast script. This is not about a single bad call from a tired referee on the field. This is about a governing body applying completely different laws to different teams on the exact same pitch. By the time we trace the timeline of those 90 minutes in Atlanta, you will see exactly how an institution can dictate an outcome without ever physically touching the ball. You will see how the spirit of the game was sacrificed for the letter of the law. The stakes of this match were heavily unbalanced long before the players walked out of the tunnel. For nearly a century, the World Cup legacy of Egypt was defined by footnotes and painful trivia. They were the team that famously missed their boat to Uruguay for the inaugural tournament back in 1930. Across 7 previous World Cup appearances before this tournament, they had played 7 matches and won exactly 0 knockout games. 0. They arrived in the United States as a country obsessed with football but starved of global validation. They had just fought their way past New Zealand and Australia to reach this stage. But entering that stadium in Atlanta, they were widely viewed not as genuine contenders, but as scheduled victims. They were supposed to be a warm-up act for Argentina. The reigning world champions were on a quest for consecutive titles. The narrative demanded that the South American giants advance. But stepping onto the grass against Argentina, the men from Egypt did not play like a historical stepping stone. They played like a wrecking ball. From the opening whistle, the rigid hierarchy of global football began to fracture in real time. The underdog squad was entirely fearless. They snapped into tackles and refused to be intimidated by the famous blue and white shirts. At the 15-minute mark, Yasser Ibrahim shattered the illusion of invincibility. A perfectly placed cross from Marwan Attia found him in the box, and he sent a header rocketing past Emiliano Martinez. The bench of Egypt detonated in pure disbelief and unbridled joy. The stadium fell into a stunned silence. The massive underdog was up by a goal against the kings of the sport. Then came the moment that should have restored the natural order of things. 6 minutes later, the referee pointed to the penalty spot after a foul in the box. Lionel Messi stepped up to take the kick. This was the machinery of the sport operating exactly as intended, the great man taking the penalty to provide the swift redemption. But Mostafa Shobair, the goalkeeper of Egypt, had other plans. He threw his body to the left and saved the penalty. That save cemented a bizarre and terrifying reality for the heavy favorites. Shobair was not just making a save. He was continuing a family legacy on the grandest stage. His father, Ahmed, was the goalkeeper for Egypt at the tournament in 1990. The time-wasting tactics of his father against Ireland were so legendary that they literally helped force the sport to change the back pass rule. Now, decades later, the son was single-handedly holding off the greatest player who ever lived. He stopped another point-blank shot. He watched a curling free kick smack the outside of the post. He kept out every single attempt from close range, leaving the attackers of Argentina staring at the sky in total shock. Because of those heroics, Argentina reached halftime of a World Cup match, trailing for the first time since Germany handed them a 4-goal humiliation back in 2010. The world champions were visibly rattled. They looked heavy and completely out of ideas against a team that simply refused to bow to their superior status. The global footballing hierarchy was collapsing right in front of our eyes. We all love a miracle. We love when the underdog rises up and strikes fear into the hearts of the elite. But the establishment rarely allows a miracle to proceed without a technical review. When centralized power feels threatened by chaos, it does not panic. It simply consults the rulebook to find a loophole. The men in suits do not need to step onto the pitch to change the momentum. They just need a monitor. The anger you feel when a beautiful game is hijacked by selectively enforced rules is completely justified. If you want to understand how deep that institutional rot goes, and if you want to know what happens when a team of underdogs forces a multi-billion-dollar machine into a corner, stay with me for this next chapter. Because what happened next in Atlanta was not just football. It was a bureaucratic execution. If an institution wants to protect its premium product, it does not need a grand conspiracy involving secret meetings in dark rooms. It just needs a monitor and a man willing to stare at it until he finds a technicality. Before this tournament even began, the refereeing czar of FIFA, Pierluigi Collina, issued a strict mandate to officials worldwide. His directive was incredibly clear and heavily publicized. Stop policing soft contact. Let the game breathe. Keep the tempo high. Football is a contact sport, and the governing body wanted a product that flowed without constant interruption. And for the vast majority of the tournament, that philosophy worked beautifully. The official data proves it beyond any shadow of a doubt. Fouls plummeted down to an average of 22.6 per game. This was a massive, statistically significant shift from the 25 fouls per game we saw back in 2022, and a drastic drop from the 27 fouls per game in 2018. The entire refereeing philosophy of the event was built around one singular idea. Let the game flow. Do not be soft. Do not stop a fast-paced match for a minor shirt tug. But then the second half began in Atlanta. Egypt was playing out of their minds. They broke fast down the field early in the period. Hassan tore down the left flank, leaving defenders grasping at the air behind him. A perfect ball slid through the defensive line, and Zico, a striker named after a Brazilian legend, finished it beautifully. The score was 2-0. Egypt was standing on the absolute threshold of the semifinals. They were about to make history. Except the video assistant referee started rewinding the tape. And rewinding. And rewinding. Depending on which official clock you use, the replay booth went back roughly 30 seconds, or 17 seconds of active playing time prior to the ball hitting the back of the net. They were searching the archives of the match for a reason to cancel the goal. And eventually, if you look hard enough at high-definition slow-motion footage, you will find an infraction. They found one. A player from Egypt, Marwan Atia, had given the lightest possible tug to the shirt of Lisandro Martinez and slightly clipped his toe in the buildup. That was the entire foul. A momentary grab and a grazed boot. The goal was scratched off. The scoreboard was reset to 1-0. Let us look closely at the evidence stacking up against this singular decision. Alongside the explicit public mandate from Pierluigi Collina to allow physical play, we have the statistical reality of fewer fouls called across the entire month of competition. Alongside those tournament-wide numbers, we have the clear precedent set in other matches where aggressive boots to the face went completely unchecked by the video review system. Alongside the fact that goals were allowed to stand after heavy tackles in previous rounds, we have a referee in this specific game digging through half a minute of routine midfield footage just to penalize a stepped-on toe. How do you reconcile a tournament built entirely on speed with a vital ruling built entirely on slow motion? Why does the standard for physical contact suddenly change when the reigning champions are on the brink of an embarrassing elimination? Is it just a massive coincidence that the most microscopic, forensic review of the entire month happened precisely when the biggest athletic star on earth was about to be sent home in disgrace? The anger radiating from the players of Egypt was not just about a cancelled goal. It was about facing a completely different rulebook. They were playing under a set of laws that nobody else had been subjected to all month long. They were colliding directly with the anatomy of a double standard. But here is the most incredible part of this entire phase of the match. Egypt refused to fold. They did not collapse into a puddle of self-pity. 8 minutes after having the goal stolen from them, they simply tore down the field and did it again. Hassan left the defense absolutely stranded, cut the ball back into the danger zone, and Zico buried it past the keeper. This time, there was no rewind. There was no reprieve from the booth for the heavy favorites. It was 2-0 for real. Atlanta Stadium went into a state of total, deafening shock. The massive underdog was just 11 minutes away from the greatest result in their entire footballing history. They had waited nearly a century for a World Cup quarterfinal win, and they were exactly 11 minutes away from securing it against the kings of the sport. It is mathematically tempting to blame everything that happened next entirely on the men in the replay booth. It is incredibly easy to say that the system rigged the final minutes to save the superstar, and that the emotional damage of the VAR call broke the defense of Egypt. But doing so erases the undeniable, suffocating gravity of a 39-year-old savant finding magic in the dark. Nobody handed Lionel Messi that comeback. You can expose the anatomy of a double standard all day long, but you still have to deal with the athletic genius operating on the pitch. Messi had done almost nothing all night. He looked tired. He looked beaten. He had been bundled off the ball, dispossessed easily, under hitting simple passes and ballooning shots over the bar. He had been completely humiliated by a penalty, save early in the match. He was looking every single one of his 39 years. He was exactly 11 minutes away from walking off a World Cup pitch for the last time as a beaten man. But then, the manager of Argentina, Lionel Scaloni, made a crucial tactical switch. He brought on Lautaro Martinez for Rodrigo de Paul. This substitution forcefully shunted Messi out toward the right wing. In the middle of the pitch, Messi had been totally suffocated. He was swarmed by 3 Egyptian shirts every single time he even looked at the ball. Out wide on the flank, he finally found fresh air to breathe. In the 79th minute, Messi floated a perfect, mathematically precise cross from that right side. Christian Romero rose high above a crowded penalty area and headed the ball past the heroic goalkeeper of Egypt. The score was 2-1. The momentum shifted instantly. The stadium woke up from its stunned silence. Moments later, the aging captain embarked on an absurd run through multiple bodies. It was the kind of explosive, mazy dribble he had not been able to execute for years. He was dodging tackles and leaving younger, stronger men grasping at shadows. And then, in the 83rd minute, the defense of Egypt made their one fatal athletic mistake of the entire night. They failed to clear their lines properly. The ball dropped from the sky and landed perfectly at the feet of Messi just inside the penalty box. Under maximum pressure, with the weight of his entire nation on his shoulders, there was only ever going to be one outcome. He unleashed a flawless half-volley. The goalkeeper got two strong hands on it, but simply could not stop the sheer, terrifying velocity of the strike. The ball flew directly into the roof of the net. 2-2. That goal was his 21st in World Cup history, extending his own monumental record. He became the first player ever to score in 6 consecutive World Cup knockout matches. And the cruel irony is that he accomplished this historic feat in the exact same match where he became the first man to ever miss 2 penalties in one tournament. He possessed the worst record in the sport and the greatest record in the sport simultaneously. That is the duality of a genius pushed to the absolute limit. Does a moment of pure individual brilliance erase the institutional failure that kept the window open for him to perform it? I want you to answer that for me down in the comments right now. Tell me if you think athletic greatness makes up for uneven officiating. Can we separate the genius of the player from the bureaucratic refereeing decisions that gave him the platform to survive? Let me know where you stand, because I am genuinely torn on how to appropriately weigh these two colliding realities. The truth is that both realities exist in the exact same space. Argentina demonstrated the raw heart of a champion. They fought back like street fighters who simply refused to die. Enzo Fernandez stated plainly after the match that this is a group that never gives up. The manager of Argentina was so overwhelmed by the physical and emotional effort that he could not even finish his post-match interview. That level of passion is real. That is not a team being carried entirely by officials. That is a team refusing to accept defeat. Messi provided the athletic comeback of the century. He proved exactly why he is regarded as the greatest to ever touch a football. But the match was not over yet. Stoppage time was approaching fast. And deep in stoppage time, the rulebook was about to step back onto the pitch and provide the controversy of the decade. Deep into stoppage time, the bureaucratic logic holding this match together completely fractured. 2 minutes past the 90th minute, Mohamed Salah went down inside the penalty area of Argentina. He was screaming for a foul, claiming Julian Alvarez had tripped him. The whistle of the referee stayed silent. The video assistant referee did not intervene. There was no check. There was no rewind. Argentina broke immediately down the field. Lautaro Martinez swung in a cross, and Enzo Fernandez headed home the winner. 3-2. In the cruelest twist of fate, the man this game had been built around, Mohamed Salah, was the one who lost possession in the move that killed the dream of his own country. The players of Egypt slumped to the turf. Their manager, Hossam Hassan, insisted afterward that a shirt had been pulled in that box. The officiating logic behind that non-decision is exactly what turned the frustration of Egypt into something closer to fury. It is the exact mirror image of the disallowed goal from the second half. Because Salah went down inside the penalty box, the video review was not assessing a normal foul. It was assessing a penalty kick. And a penalty kick carries a deliberately higher threshold for intervention. Not enough contact for a spot kick means no review, and play continues. Had Salah been standing just 1 yard outside the penalty area, that identical contact would have been checked for a build-up foul to ensure consistency. 1 yard. That is the entire physical margin. That is the exact distance between Egypt getting a free kick and a chance to survive, and Egypt getting eliminated on a rapid counterattack. 2 nearly identical fouls occurred exactly 30 minutes apart. Yet the rigid rules of the tournament produced completely opposite verdicts on both. You can defend each individual decision if you read the technical manual in a vacuum, but try defending them together in the real world in front of a global audience. This is the ultimate anatomy of a double standard. The bureaucratic system applies completely different rules to the exact same physical contact, depending strictly on which side of a painted white line it happens, alongside the cancelled goal that totally ignored the public mandate to let the game flow, alongside the microscopic review of a grazed toe from 30 seconds earlier. We now have a standard that openly contradicts itself within the very same half of football. Two nearly identical physical interactions, separated by 30 minutes and a white chalk line. One eliminated a goal, the other eliminated a nation. You can stand in awe of the sheer bloody-minded resilience of Argentina while simultaneously condemning the bureaucratic architecture that paved their runway. At the final whistle, this match completely lost its mind. Messi walked toward the bench of Egypt and exchanged words with Hossam Hassan. We do not know what was said because no audio was ever released, but the response from Hassan was extraordinary. He crossed his arms into an X. He shoved the official anti-racism gesture of FIFA, the exact protocol introduced in 2024 to combat discrimination, directly into the face of Messi. It got Hassan a booking. Then several staff members from Egypt came flooding toward the confrontation. One of them completely lost his composure. He charged at Messi with real aggression before players and security officials wrestled the situation apart. The staff member received a red card and was escorted away. The most decorated footballer in history was physically charged by the staff of an opposing coach on the pitch of a World Cup just seconds after completing one of the great comebacks. Neither FIFA nor the Egyptian Federation has clarified what triggered that gesture. Hassan never mentioned the X gesture afterward. Instead, he pointed his finger straight at the top of the sport. In an explosive interview, he stated that his team had been treated unfairly and suffered a massive injustice. He questioned the credibility of the entire tournament structure. He suggested the governing body actively wanted Messi to stay in the running for the trophy. Zico backed his manager, calling the injustice absolutely clear from the very start of the match. It is a massive accusation to level at a World Cup. And when asked to comment on these accusations, FIFA said absolutely nothing. Total silence. Both realities of Atlanta are true at once, and that is what makes this match so incredibly complicated. It is why fans will argue about these 90 minutes for the next decade. Argentina was undeniably heroic. They operated like street fighters. They refused to die under immense pressure. But Egypt was deeply wronged by a technical inconsistency that had absolutely nothing to do with a direct, orchestrated conspiracy, and everything to do with a deeply flawed system. Egypt did not lose because the governing body hacked a scoreboard or paid a referee. Egypt lost because they simply could not hold a 2-goal lead for 11 minutes against the reigning world champions, and because the rulebook shape shifted in real time to punish their aggression. Those are entirely separate wounds, and both of them hurt deeply. The tears of Messi at the final whistle kept his tournament alive as his team marches on to Kansas City. The players of Egypt fly home with the best performance in their long history, the absolute greatest goalkeeping display of the month, and a burning, unresolved sense that the system itself was quietly rigged against them. Was Atlanta the site of a miraculous sporting revival or a masterclass in selective enforcement? The history books will forever say 3-2, but the actual verdict belongs to you. If you want to keep examining how power operates behind the scenes of global sports, do not just leave this video. Join this channel and stay with us as we continue to track this ongoing story, because the truth rarely makes it to the official broadcast. This is not just a game, this is the battlefield of modern institutions.